So for those of you who don't know, my name is Kayleen Harrington and I recently joined the Norfolk Chamber of Commerce. So I joined as their event manager. So as you can imagine, we just had to throw the events calendar out the window and start again. So I really hope you're enjoying our recovery program that we are putting on, along with all the other virtual events that we are doing. The amazing thing about the recovery program is the series is designed to support businesses to restart, rebuild and renew. So in this 90-minute masterclass, Catherine Horton, CEO of Turning Factor, will help you understand motivational maps and learn what each motivator means. Explore the impact that people's motivations, so the reason for acting in a certain way, have on them and their teams. You will also learn why people do the things that they do. Key to the whole session, learn how you can apply the knowledge gained in a practical way to help build your team through these challenges. So throughout the presentation, feel free to ask Catherine questions either through the Q&A or the chat functions. You can also ask her questions after the presentation as well. So before I hand over to Catherine, just to let you know, I will be working in the background. So please don't think I'm not listening to Catherine or being rude. I'm just sorting out the back end bits and pieces of the virtual event. So yeah, Catherine, it's over to you.
Thank you, Hayley. Morning, everybody. So yeah, let's crack on and talk about motivational maps. Just a little bit on sort of being introduced to maps. It's a profiling tool that I was introduced to, gosh, it probably would have been about 5 years ago now, probably maybe a little bit longer than that. And we had a client that said, Kath, you know, done a motivational map. Have you heard of motivational maps? So I said, no, don't know about that. So he sort of talked about it and he was blown away by how accurate it was, and spoke very highly of it. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. Didn't really pay too much, but I thought, oh, I must trig that and go and have a look at what maps is about. Sometime later, I don't know, probably a number of months later, probably around about sort of 2015, it came up again, motivational maps, and I thought, right, I need to look at what this is about. So I made some investigations and found this gentleman who practiced maps, and he did my map for me. And to be honest, I mean, I was blown away by the accuracy. Now, of course, when you're completing any profile, you're completing the questionnaire. So, you know, if you're completing it sort of honestly, then you're kind of hoping that that profile, you know, is going to match you. But it really was. And I thought, yeah, okay, it's really interesting. So what we did is I then became a practitioner of motivational maps. So I could then go and deliver it into our clients, because we use sort of other psychometrics in the work that we do, and got so heavily sort of carried away with it, I guess, with how accurate these maps were coming out, that we then actually just decided to become business practitioners as well. So we license practitioners. So we've kind of gone that whole sort of hog on motivational maps, but it's a tool that we use very regularly to help us out to understand around sort of engagement and motivation. And I'm fascinated in behaviours. I'm fascinated with people, full stop, actually. That's sort of my big gig. But I'm very interested in how people display their behaviours and where do their behaviours come from. And maps gives another dimension. It's another dimension. There's lots of psychometrics and self-perception inventories, which all give you something different. And maps gives you something different again. The tool itself, let's go through and have a look at what motivational maps is. So it is a relatively new, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to use new for, but it is a relatively new self-perception tool. And the background comes from the gentleman that came up with the mapping was a chap called James Sale. And he lives down south. He's an ex-head teacher, quite a barking bonkers out there guy, really, really good chap, but an ex-head teacher. and he looked at three different theories. He looked at the theory of the Enneagram, which is a very old profiling tool. There's 9 profiles to the Enneagram. So he studied that learning. He also looked at Maslow, so the study and learning comes from there, and also Edgar Schein's career anchors, of which there's 9 career anchors. That's also the theories and the learning that he studied. So between those 3 areas, he then came up with Motivational Maps, which has 9 motivations. And it looks at what motivates people, but the gold dust piece in here is how motivated people are. And that's the gold dust bit that we find is the piece that makes mapping something quite different. So if we think about motivation, and also it's probably around about 2007, so about early sort of 2000s he was doing this study, and around about sort of 2005, 6, 7, he wavers around those times when he was testing it, but that's when it came out into the market. And it is progressing. It's a very young tool, sort of maps wise. What's been done so far, I think it's probably about 60,000 maps done, 60 to 70,000 maps done. It's not huge, but it's growing. Bearing in mind that Myers-Briggs does about 1.4 million a year. So it is rapidly growing, and particularly over the last few years, because it's taken them a while to sort of get maps out there. And there's about 400 odd practitioners. That's growing as well. So there's not many of us. We're a small community, but we think this is really in early stages of its growth. It's interesting to look at where motivation comes from, because that's something really to just try and get our heads around and understand. The 3 areas we talk about. The first place is that your motivation can come from your personality. So just have a think about this as I'm going through it. So, and your personality is a fixed thing, relatively fixed. It's something that's, sort of rooted from the past, you've grown, but your kind of personality is your personality. So let's say, for example, that if we look at some of the stuff on Myers-Briggs, you might be something that's quite planned and organised and structured, and you like things in an orderly fashion. And when you go home and maybe the children are there and they might be a bit chaotic and the washing up has been left in the sink and it's all a bit of a mess, and it's just going on and on and on, it can get you down. It can be demotivating. So there's elements of your personality which, if it's not working to you, you can become demotivated. So just have a think about that. So part of your motivation comes from your personality. What's interesting also, with your personality being relatively fixed, a lot of the psychometric testing and profiling out there is personality based. So it's a fixed thing. So most of the psychometrics are personality based. So it's easier to map, but motivation is not a fixed thing. And therefore, that's why the behavioural scientists historically have found it very difficult to map motivation. That's why a lot of the psychometrics are personality based. I said it's fixed, but motivation changes. And that's why it's been relatively difficult to track, which is why we found it really quite fascinating what James has come up with. So the second area from your motivation, comes from your self-concept. It's what you believe about yourself, but it's today, it's present. So how are you viewing yourself today? What's happening today? Are you sort of in fearful, of your job? Your self-esteem, how is that today? And what sort of, what are you enjoying today or not? What's happening? So all of that is coming in today, but that can change, okay? And that's the interesting bit. So it's all in context, but that can change. And the third area is around expectations, the future expectations. So how do you feel about the future? what's happening in the future, what's your belief about the future, and of course that is changing as well. Okay, so when we're looking at motivation, it's coming in from 3 different areas, but it changes. And what we're going to have a look at is your motivations, which everybody is motivated by them. I'll go through this. Everyone's motivated by them, and they can change, but how well your motivations are being met, that's the real variable. That's the real variable piece, and that's what is very interesting in what we're tracking here. Any questions so far on that? Kane, is there anything that's come in so far on chat on questions?
Yeah, so we've got 2 questions that's come in. One from John, sorry. So he says, how can I apply these principles to race driver career development?
Haha. Yeah, okay, so well, we're going to actually have a look. One of my very end slides is looking at career choices. So we might be covering some of that at the end, but what we're interested in, and when we start to go through them, we can probably pick some of that out, because it's what people are wanting from their job. Are they wanting, you know, is it money, is it security, is it purpose, is it sort of like that free spirit? So let's go through and start to have a look at those, and then we can see how that fixes in. As said, and then we will look at those map career choices at the end. Yeah.
Perfect. I've made a note that we'll come back to it when you get to the career side. And then we've got a question from Ian Pegg saying, what perspective do proponents of motivational maps have on growth versus fixed mindsets?
What are we meaning about the, can you just say that again? What components?
Yeah, I think that might be, they've written proponents, PROPONENTS, but I think it might be components. What perspective do components of motivational maps have on growth versus fixed mindset?
Yeah, I'm not quite just too sure about what that's asking, but Ian, I think when you're looking at motivation, motivation is something that changes. And I think that, you know, if you are in a mindset, I mean, it's all about what your mindset is. I mean, if you are in a growth mindset, you're going to find this absolutely fascinating. If you're more in a, I don't know, I think it probably just depends where you are sort of in your headspace. I mean, I think looking at motivations and the power of it, some people, what's interesting, which might be answering this, is rarely, and it doesn't happen very often, but rarely we will get people completing maps and they'll say that it's not them. That's really interesting. And what I'm finding here, and I had this not so long back where I'm sort of teeing up with somebody, and I said that if this map is not accurate, sometimes it says more about the individual and their mindset than it is about the map itself, because we are finding the maps extremely accurate. To the extent that we had somebody that came in, I've had this a few times, where they've come in, we've looked at the map, and I've been sitting there thinking, crikey, you know, this isn't reflective, you know, this isn't right, and this map is wrong. But the more we've got into the conversation and the person's felt more comfortable, the map was spot on. And that was a situation where the map was very, very low. So we are finding that the maps are turning the invisible into the visible. So I don't know whether that's sort of helping just to answer that question, but it's very interesting. It's spookily accurate. I mean, it's a self-perception, so you are wanting people to answer it. But of course, when you're calibrating and feeding the map back, that's giving you information as well. But if people are doing the maps, generally they want to do it to help, so they're answering the questions, you know, honestly. But we are finding it's turning the invisible into the visible. Yeah. Okay. I don't know whether that's answered or not, but we'll see.
That's fine. I've gone back to Ian and asked him to let me know if it doesn't. Okay. Yeah. So we've got a comment come in from Michael, but I'll save that because it's to do with the racing driver, so more the career specific. And we've just had a question come in from Colin saying, can maps help to identify personality challenges then? Borderline, P disorder, for example?
Can they help to identify personality challenges? Yes, absolutely. And I've got a good example of one of the maps, because again, it depends what you mean by personality challenges, but I've got one map that I'm going to cover in our presentation where this individual was all over the shop. And he wasn't being, I understood him when we went through and did the map and obviously had a conversation, but you could see how he was getting very, very confused, and his communication was confusing. And when we did the map, it was like, oh, it's kind of making some sense. So I think, and also Colin, just thinking about that question, there's a lot more into people than just looking at motivations, but because I'm very interested in sort of look at behaviours, I can tell a lot with somebody and how they are through looking at their motivations. So yes is the answer to that. You can help and it can help you to understand some personality challenges, but as I said, it's only giving you a part dimension. There's a lot more to it. Yeah.
Perfect. That's it for now. So
okay, good.
Carry on.
In here. Let's move on. Let's have a look at the next piece. Okay, so what I just want to sort of go through here is how we can use maps, because there are different ways that you can use them. The first thing is in engagement, and of course at the moment, current climate, and I'm going to show you a map with somebody who was furloughed, has come back, is now working at home. So I'm going to show you one of those. I've got a live map. But you can use mapping to assess that level of engagement and motivation, because if somebody's motivated, they're going to equal productivity, they're going to equal happy. You're going to get some good stuff out of them. So it's really great to address those motivation levels, and assess them and see where they sit. So it's a great tool for engagement. Another use for it, recruitment. You have to be really careful with tools you use in recruitment, but this is used for recruitment. We've used it ourselves, but also we've used it with some of our clients that have been saying, Kath, can we just do these maps for these individuals that we've got coming in just to see where they're sitting? And when I go through the individual profiles, you'll start to see my reasoning as to why you can use it in recruitment. So it's very powerful for that. Reward, definitely. I think you can be more strategic in how you reward. Hertzberg's theory of motivation, very relevant. Love that theory. I think it's very real. Varied work content and making sure people have praise and recognition and that opportunity to grow. Some really good stuff in there. What motivational mapping does is it makes it more specific, because people are motivated by different things. And I'm going to talk about pay as a motivator as well. So that, as I said, I think you can be a little bit more strategic in how you reward, and sometimes not taking such a blanket approach. Definitely team development. Your map and your motivations could clash with somebody else. So I'm going to show you one of those as well. I'm going to show you a team map towards the end of the presentation. So looking at team dynamics and communication, it can help you with that. Personal development, huge. If you're understanding your motivations and how your behaviours play off the back of your motivations, I think it's phenomenal for helping to increase your emotional intelligence. Anything to improve your EI and MyCamp is a tick in the box. And of course, career development. So the thing we have to be careful with motivations, and I think it goes a caveat across everything really, is your motivations can change. So therefore, if your self-concept is changing, that's where your motivations will then change. So we have had examples where we've looked at maps and you would look at a map and think, you want to be a manager, but your map is not really sort of showing perhaps that sort of motivation and sort of the profiling of a manager, because there's some certain sort of profiles that we would like to see in a manager or a leader. But of course, doesn't mean to say that they couldn't be a good manager. Now, it could cause them some challenges if their motivations don't change, but if you really want to see your, be a manager and develop and all the rest of it, as your self-concept changes, your motivations can change. So again, when you're reading maps and understanding maps as a practitioner, you've got to think quite wide on it and be very careful not to be boxing people in and writing people off just because their map shows that. So be very, very careful with that. Right, well, let's go and have a look at them and look at the different motivations. And as we're going through the motivations, I'd be very interested, and Kayleen will just sort of highlight them out if you think that there's any of them that are particularly strong for you. Because what we're saying here is you're motivated by all of these 9 motivations, but it's the strength of that motivation. Some you'll take it, leave it, not really motivated by them. Others will be very strong. So that's where we're looking. And we've got 3 clusters here: our relationships, or sometimes our belonging motivators, our achievement or work motivators, we'll sometimes say, and our growth motivators. And James has put them into the colours as well. James Dell put them into the colours. So the green for growth, sort of roots, foundation, roots. So we have our friend, our defender and star. We have our achievement, our work sort of more work focused, our actions. So we've got red, and then we have blue, his sort of blue sky, future thinking. So he's kind of just thought a little bit about, he hasn't just done random colours. And in our blue, we have our searcher, our creator, and our spirit. And what we can also sort of interpret here is if we have individuals who are biased in these motivations. So let's say, for example, in your order, because you'll all have an order of your motivations of 1 to 9. Let's say that your top 3 were friend, defender, star in your profile. Then we tend to see that you operate at a little bit of a slower pace, to put it. It's kind of like, come on, get a move on, all in your own time. So again, you can see the behaviours and the personality that might be coming off the back. Versus the growth, achievement mid, but growth, we've had some individuals that have been, top searcher, creator, spirit in their top 3, and they're very future orientated because they're future orientated, focused, and they'll work very quickly. And we've had scenarios where they've perhaps left colleagues behind because they are so sort of out there and wanting to get that pace. As I said, there's so much more to individuals than just mapping, but I'm interested in it giving a dimension. It's giving me more information. So we do see that, which is quite interesting. Yeah, okay, let's go and have a look at what they mean. So we have our work and our achievement motivators. So first of all, we've got our builder. Okay, let's just see what the builder is. In Hertzberg's theory, some of you may be familiar, you've all heard of Maslow, there's Hertzberg, that's another theory. So the theory in Hertzberg puts pay as a hygiene motivator. And what's interesting with pay, if you are motivated in Hertzberg's theory, if you're really motivated by pay, then we'd be getting up and fantastic, we're getting paid at the end of the month, that's great. But he puts it in as a hygiene factor. The fact that we need to be paid, it doesn't necessarily motivate us, but if we didn't get paid, we would be demotivated. So that's how he classes his hygiene factor. And I have had so many people challenge that over the time. And of course you can challenge a theory, it's only a theory. Challenge all theories, doesn't mean to say it's right. And people have said, Kath, I'm really motivated by money. I don't agree with that. That's my main driver. But what we like about maps is it notices this. So a builder is somebody who can be quite driven, so quite target orientated. They like to earn money. They kind of like a little bit of an above average standard of living, materialistic. Be mindful of that word. It might be that you're high builder because you're the main breadwinner. So you are really motivated by money. We've had some interesting examples here where we had this one chap and he said, he did his map and builder came down really low. And he didn't understand it. He said, I've always been motivated by money and to earn money. And we thought, crikey, no, is it wrong? Has it not mapped it right? And he sort of thought about it. He said, no, I've worked out why it's low. He said, I've just paid my mortgage off. That's why, he said, so I'm not so money orientated. How interesting. So it pushed it further down the pile. Had this other lady, she didn't like the fact that it said on here requires an above average sort of standard of living. She didn't like that. No, that's not builder. You know, I like to earn money. What was interesting about this lady was the amount of holidays that she had every year. The amount of things that she used to buy and clothes and stuff, but particularly the holidays. And you kind of think, you know, yeah, you do, you know, that's above average, the amount of holidays that you have. So again, it's just leaking off behaviours. Director, okay, so we have our director. Let's just have a look at there. That's about having control. You like to have control as a director. So it's control of people, of resources, perhaps making those decisions. You quite enjoy being delegated to. So the thing with a director is we like to see, if you're a manager, or certainly a senior leader, we like to see director in your top levels of your profiles. And I'll talk about what I mean by that shortly, but we like to see that further up in your profile. And I'll give you an example of that. We're on a programme and we had everyone doing their maps, and we had the head of the whole department on the programme, and I hadn't seen his map. And I generally don't like to see maps. I like to sort of give my sort of interpretation of how I'm seeing somebody. Let's see how that goes into the map. So we're talking about maps, and I said about the director, and the fact that if you're a manager or a leader, that we like to see the director higher up. And he started to get really uncomfortable in the session, and I kind of noticed it. But at any rate, when we actually looked at his map individually with him, his director was sitting down as one of the lowest on his profile. And it was sitting uncomfortable with him because he knew, because he was out of control. We were quite frustrated with him on the programme because we were trying to do some works and some projects on this particular programme behind the learning we were doing. And the feedback that we were getting from the senior manager was, oh no, everyone's too busy. He was saying, yeah, but we've agreed to do these projects and they need to be doing them. Yeah, but they're all too busy to do them. And the more we were going on, the more we were thinking, have you got a grip of this? Who's actually in control here? You or the people? That's what we were beginning to think. And when we looked at the map, gosh, did it show it. So it really helped, and he took it on board. He didn't like it, but he took it on board that he perhaps wasn't in control as he should have been. So again, this is where it's very interesting to see the behaviours that come off the back of these motivations. An expert wants to be the master of their trade or profession. They love to be the specialist. Ask an expert to do the presenting. Give them a training course to attend so they can increase on their skills. And now you may be starting to see something in here when we come to rewarding our people. Let's give them a pay rise. We've had this as an example. They just weren't motivated. I gave this person a pay rise. I thought they'd be really pleased. When we looked at their map, they weren't high builder, they were lower builder. So it's like, oh, right, yeah. Perhaps I should have done some training instead. It's like, yeah, that probably would have motivated them a bit more to build on their knowledge. It's interesting, isn't it? This is how you can see you can be a little bit smarter. So the expert is being about a master of their trade. They're the specialist. Yes, so getting them to be the go-to can sometimes be really helpful. Yeah, that will feed. It's all about feeding your motivations and feeding your colleagues' motivations. Okay, any questions coming in so far, Kayleen, or any thoughts on that we've got? So I'm just mindful just to take
That's
through.
fine. We've just got the one. So Julie Forder said, can you have different motivators for home and work?
The profile is more work orientated, Julie. So you may find there will be different motivators. I would probably, but it is more work orientated. I think, and certainly from my experience, when you start looking at the motivations and you start getting under the behaviours, you can really start to see you as a person, which I think is across work and home life. It's all about just understanding yourself. But also the motivations can be in context. So therefore, yes, you may find that they change. But the profile in general is based more in the workplace than at home. So that's how it's been orientated. So, but yes, I hope I've answered that. It's a little bit, you know, it is more work orientated, but because of the behaviours that play through, that will probably come into your home life, but it is all in context. Yep.
Thank you. That's the only question we've got.
Yeah. As I said, the whole profile is based more in the workplace. Let's go on and have a look at our next ones. Okay, right. Friend, defender, star. Friend, so we've got our relationship, or sometimes our belonging motivators, and this is quite interesting with current times actually. I mean, the builder one is if people are worried about their pay, or they've been on furlough, they're only getting 80% of their pay. You can see how that builder could perhaps be a bit demotivating for somebody who's not getting paid the money if they're high builder. So you can see all of that. Friend is another one that comes in here that we've seen has been a bit of a challenge with working at home. So the friend comes to work because their friends are there, and they like being part of a community, and they kind of perhaps a little bit more sociable, and they sort of like to be liked. We see a high friend that we worked with a high friend, and that was our individual that would get the bunting out on birthdays and cards, and the birthday cakes would be done. And I have to say, I would go into the office and sometimes I'll be thinking, for goodness sake, however long has it been taking to do that when you should be working? And I get it, I understand it, but it did used to frustrate me, because friend is actually one of my lowest motivators. It's my lowest one. So I would get frustrated, but of course I'm well-rounded and I have to be mindful, but it's all about that friendships. Now, what's interesting here with working at home, that's a challenge. And we also had an example of an individual who was introverted. They're very high on introversion on their MBTI type. You would have naturally have thought that they would be quite happy in their own home space because they were very high I. It gives you one dimension of person, because when MBTI is understood, Myers-Briggs as a personality type, it's about how you're energized. And this person was energized being in their own space, but they were classed as an introvert, or they'll like working at home. But in their profile, they were high friend, and it was not being met, and they were really struggling, and mentally she was struggling. So this we see as a real challenge at the moment, because they like that community and that sense of belonging. So your Zoom meetings, your face to face on the Zoom meetings, getting your teams together virtually, you just got to be right up it when you've got somebody who's a high friend. So that's your friend motivator. Love to be around people. So in careers or jobs, if you've got somebody who's out on the road Monday to Friday, managing their own diary, perhaps friends might not be that, they could get demotivated if they're high friend. You might find that we had this, they keep popping into the office. They keep popping into the office and coming back, and it's like, you're meant to be out. But they wanted that interaction. So that's an interesting one in friend, and of course in career choices. Defender. Let's have a look at that one. Again, challenge in current times. They want stability, security, and safety, and they enjoy that element of predictability. We say communicate, communicate, communicate with your defender. They don't really like those changes and sort of last minute changes and surprises. And that's because they, as I said, they like that stability. So in current times, and that kind of plays through in a little bit of my example, that can be a real challenge because of that, element of instability. So that might be Defender coming into work. For some people, it could mean, I like to know I've got my job, I come into work and I've got my job. For other people, it might mean that I know what I'm doing day to day. And I like that kind of systematic approach because everything's as it is. So these profiles can sometimes mean different things. Again, as a practitioner, that's what you're working out. And then we have our star. Our star. It's easy to feed a star. Just tell them they're great, recognize them for what they're doing. They like to be recognised for their achievements. We love salespeople who are high stars because they're easy to motivate, just stroke them and love them. We did have an individual and she was an HR manager. So, and she had star in her high motivators, but it wasn't being met. She was really demotivated. So we asked her what the challenge was. She said, yes, she said, I did a project where we had high sickness and absence. So I put a big project in place, back to work interviews, training for the managers, to try and get our absence and sickness down, getting people to call in when they should rather than texting, all of that, did a big initiative. And she said, it really made a difference. And our absence and sickness came down. She said, but the directors came in and they thanked all the managers. They didn't thank me. There you are, low star. What was the point in doing it? So she didn't get that recognition, and that's really what she wanted. So as I said, it's easy to feed a star and to give them that recognition for their achievements. And when we've had some very high stars, and sometimes because they want it to be all about me, you can see that that can cause some frustrations as well. But hey, this is all about using maps to moderate and to get to know people. And that's your high star. And anything so far, just stop on the end of each one, Kayleen, just in case.
Yeah, so we've had a couple come in. So one's going back to the previous slide. So Louise says, I feel like I'm a strong builder, director and expert. Is that too greedy?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Definitely not. I mean, that's really fascinating because that's going to come in through in your behaviours. So you're somebody who's, I would imagine, is very driven to get what you want. You may be coming across, I mean, if it's coming in your top motivators, you might be somebody who's quite controlling, but quite frustrating because you're always wanting that detail and it always has to be just right. So that it'd be interesting in your map to see how that was coming through, but it's absolutely not too greedy. Yeah, why not be a builder? You want to achieve, you want to earn money. I don't see why we should be shying away from the fact that we want to earn money. Don't shy away from it. We had it the other week where we were doing some work and it was all about these people getting these promotions and and an opportunity to progress. And they were very shy about, oh, well, one of the benefits could be that we could earn more money. It's not all about the money. It's not all about the money. I said, guys, don't be shy. We all like to earn some money. It's more important than some to others. Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions?
Yeah, so we've got John that says, has COVID and the shift in employment market caused a change in the motivators?
It probably will be, but not seeing it enough yet. And I haven't been doing enough on the motivations to see how it's changing, because some people in their motivations are really quite okay with change. And also you're playing around with self-confidence and what's going on out there. So not necessarily, but for some people, yes, it definitely will change their motivators, which is why we advocate doing these maps and these profiles regularly, which is unusual because you wouldn't be doing your Myers-Briggs every 6 months or your insights or your FIRE, you wouldn't be doing those every 6 or 12 months because you're relatively fixed in what you are, but your motivational map, yes, because they will change for some people, definitely.
Thank you. And we've just had one more come in. So Leanne says, Defender does not sound useful for organisations. We need people who need to cope with change. How does their stability help us organisationally?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it is a good one because sometimes we do need that stability. I think some people remember the stability. Sometimes the defender for some people might just be that I want to know that I've got my job. So that could be how it comes across. For other people in their defender, if you're an organisation that is quite fast moving and there's a lot of change, then yes, a defender might struggle with that. And this is also where you're playing motivations into a culture. Your culture may not fit somebody's motivations. Their motivations might not fit your culture. So that definitely plays in. But let's also think about those individuals that do like, sometimes with change, it's sometimes just nice to get a little bit of stability. And those individuals sometimes can bring a little bit of that to the table just to calm things down a bit. But remember, it might not necessarily be that. It might just be that somebody wants to know they've got their job. We have worked for us high defender, and they have struggled with change. You can coach it, you can train it, and nurture that. But I think there's a positive and a drawback from it on that. As I said, don't write somebody off just because they're a high defender, but yes, it can cause challenges.
Thank you. That's it for questions for the time being.
These are great questions coming in here. Yeah, this is some great questions. Let's move on and have a look at where we're going. So our searcher, creator, spirit, our last three. Right, searcher, so seeks meaning, wants to do meaningful work, and they want to have a purpose, and they like to know they're making a difference. Now, the feedback they want on this is that they want plenty of feedback that they are making a difference. So that's the reassurance. So this, again, I think is helpful as a manager as to how you give feedback and praise. If you've got somebody who's a high searcher, let them know how their work is connected to the bigger picture. You've done a really great job there. Can you see the impact that you've had? That's really helped us to do that. Really helpful. Thank you so much. Great piece of work. We had an individual who was high searcher and it was not being met. This will all make sense when I say not being met when we look at analysis. And she was doing work. She did a report. And I popped into the office. She said, I'm really annoyed. So I said, what's happened? And she said, I've been doing this report. I do it every month. She said, and I've been struggling to get it done this month because I've been really up against it. And I've just found out that my report doesn't even get read. What is the point in that? Because we'd done her map and that was coming out in it. But there's a really good example. Doing this report every month, what is the point? So that's your searcher. They like to see the meaning in what they do. And we are seeing there's not a huge amount of analysis done on maps yet. There's not enough been done, but they will be doing some analysis. They have done a bit, and they have clocked that searcher in the UK, because this you can use globally across all, this is not just UK, this is across all cultures, that the searcher certainly in the UK, because that's where most of the maps have been done, is coming out, I think they said probably about 60% of the time in top motivations. It's very high. Wonder whether that's saying something about our sort of culture in the UK, but search has been coming out quite high. But that's about that meaning and purpose. Right, creator thrives on new opportunities to develop and innovate. Love, we had somebody who was just off the scale creator, change. So they want a role where they have that opportunity to create change, quite risk friendly. And we had a lady who was brand new into an organisation. She'd only been in for about 2-3 months, high creator, wasn't being met. I said, what was the reason for that, Ellie? And she said, I just don't feel as if I know the organisation well enough yet to be making change. So that was the challenge there. And spirit, high spirit, freedom, independence, don't like being micromanaged. I'm happy to set my own priorities and make my own decisions. So that's a free spirit. So maybe, again, working from home at the moment, that could be really fitting a spirit. Be careful not to micromanage them. So you've got to do this management piece right with them. But that freedom and independence is absolutely what a spirit likes. So if you've got somebody who's out on the road running their own diary and they're high spirit, they're going to be motivated. And just remember, with all of these motivations, if they're being met, you will be motivated, which equals happy person and productivity. And that's what we're after. Okay, Kayleen, any questions come in?
We just had a comment more than a question. So read the previous slide. Gigi has said, there are also sometimes underlying problems with defenders and maps can help.
Yeah, definitely. Great point, Judy. Definitely. As I said, this is all part of you reading and understanding people and behaviours. Yeah, it can all, there's a lot to it. So it's good comment. Let's move on and have a look at let's have a look at a few maps. Just on those hot buttons, I'll just sort of cover over this, but you can see some of those hot buttons down there. And this is, when you look at each of those areas, some of the things that will float their boat. So the builder, you know, money is a key thing. So have they got an opportunity to earn commission, you know, or be given, you know, bought something material that will float their boat. And of course, a director, are they in a role? You know, if you've got somebody who's a director who's not a manager, is there something that you could give them where they've got a bit of responsibility? Could they lead a meeting or do something like that? So you can feed into these motivations. Your creator down the bottom, they love that innovation and change. So could you perhaps reward for innovation or ideas? I think it's about doing a mix of these things. I think this really helps to really think about what are your reward strategies and can we perhaps do a mix of these so we're fitting in with everybody. I think there's perhaps something in that. So we do like that, you know, just looking at those hot buttons and those rewards. Right, let's read some maps. This is let's get into the crux of it. Here we go. This is our live map that we've had. This is an individual that was furloughed, come back, they're now working from home. They were also working in a smaller organisation historically and have moved into working into, of recent, over this year, into a larger organisation. So there has been a change in them in organisations. And this is how we're generally sort of been looking at the maps. You'll see that we've got the order of the motivations down the left-hand side, 1 to 9. So search a spirit creator are the top 3, and we are interested in the top 3 motivations. When you do a profile and you get your profiling report, it is the top 3 and the bottom which comes through, and it is the top 3 motivations where you can which also produces you your primary or personal motivation audit score. That's where the percentage of 28% comes from. That's in your final column where you'll see PMA. I'll come to that in a moment. The middle column, you'll see the score, 33 at the top, 12 down the bottom. Anything that is 20 and above on the scoring equals you are motivated by it. So if I just put up these scorings here, you can see what I mean. You can see 36 plus, it's quite intense. You're really driven by it. It goes up to 40. So it's really intense. You could be overdriven. You can imagine somebody who's a high star, a 40 on star, blooming annoying. It's all about them. You just got to, it can be quite frustrating. Somebody who's a high builder, you know, it's all about the money, the money, the money, the money. So you could see somebody sort of overdriven. You can see 20 and above motivated, and as you go down, less motivation in the low figures, 8 and below. Take it or leave it. This is not really important to me. And if you have somebody who then has the opposite motivation to you higher up, that's where you can get the conflict. So that's our scoring, which we'll be looking at. And there's some more behind that. So lots behind it. Let me just give the overview. So you've then got your PMA score. That's telling you how well your motivation's being met. So look at this for this individual, 28%. And if I put up that little piece on the corners, I'm just aware I've got a little few bits up on your slides now. Oops. Just come back out of there. Can you see that there? You can see that on your primary motivational audit score, then you've got 80+%. You're happy in your job role. It's great. I'm okay. And that's where we like it to be. 60 to 79%, you know, there's bits that need tweaking. But when you start going lower, you've got some challenges and problems. And below 35%, our lady here is 28%. It's kind of like, yeah, this is not good. She was not happy. And it was very real. And she was being micromanaged. She didn't feel she had the freedom. She couldn't see the point of what she was doing. She wasn't getting the feedback. I mean, it's all going on, but that is serious demotivation. And what we see with kind of 35% below, sometimes around the 40s, people are looking for other job roles, difficult in current climate, but they're not happy. And we do have somebody actually that's actively looking for another job because they're just so demotivated. So we are seeing those examples. So that's showing you how, and that 28%, by the way, is made up from those top three, so from the 4, 1 and 1. And the thinking behind it is if your top three motivations are not being met, it's not totally regardless of the others, but primarily the top three, you're not happy. If the top three are all being met, so let's say they were 10, 10, 10, 9, 9, 8, 8, 9, 10, and the other ones were lower on the PMA score, not being met, then you'd still be pretty motivated. The others would need to be tweaked and addressed. Don't ignore them, but you're still going to be in a good place. So it's the top three motivations that we're very, very interested in. Okay, so that's showing you we've got concerns we need to get in. And the idea of using maps is to try and it's a great communication tool to try and understand what's going on for somebody. Let me show you some other maps. It's going to go through and we'll just interpret some other maps. This was a lady called Jean. Not going to spend too much on Jean. What I wanted to show you here, you might just notice. What do you notice with Jean? Biggest challenge, 13%. It's one of our lowest maps ever that we've had on audit. She was really not happy. There was a lot going on here. High searcher, stacks going on, but just really not motivated. So this was a serious problem. The business knew about it. As I said, there's more to it, but she was seriously trying to get out of the role she was in. And what's a shame is that that potentially could have been avoided if she had perhaps been given feedback before, nipped the problem before it got into such an issue. She potentially could have been perhaps saved from that, but it's one of our lowest scores that we've seen at 13%. I'm going to show you another map which is very interesting in behaviours. I just want to demonstrate just a little bit how you can view maps and interpret them. This was a lady called Josie, about 26 years old. She did this map in the February, March, getting married in the September. She worked in an organisation which was 3 generations. She came in, she said she'd been looking for other jobs. She wasn't happy. She had been doing a big project, a big change project, and she didn't feel that she had had the recognition that she rightly deserved. How fascinating. That's her star, only at a 4, and was important to her. And also she didn't feel that she was being rewarded. So she looked for another job. She found another job that was going to pay her £6,000 more in her salary. 26 years old, getting married, 6,000 more. That's a lot of money. And she turned the job down. We did her map. Yeah, Josie, you know, what was happening? She said, yes, she said, this is really interesting with this recent example of my job hunting. She said, yeah, I haven't been happy. You know, I don't think I've had the recognition. I could do with some more money. It's important to me. She said, but I looked at this company that offered me this job. They offered me the job. She said, and I did a company house check and kind of didn't really think that they were as stable and secure as the one that I was in. So I kind of didn't really do the move. I thought I'd just stay here. How interesting. What we're playing with here in her map is something that we call a polarity reinforcement. What you'll notice in her map is she's high defender, 37. That's high. So she likes stability and security, and it was being met at 10. Her creator is the bottom motivator. And when you get, and what we have here is opposites. Defender, security, stability, creator's all about change. And that sat in the bottom of her map, but it was also being met. And when we see this combination, what happens is one reinforces the other. A polarity reinforcement. Her creator was just reinforcing her need for that security and stability. And we see this pattern, we can only read it in certain maps, but this is a classic, because when your lowest motivator is sitting at sort of 8 and below, and it's being met, that can be a demonstration that it's then reinforcing the top, which is an opposite. Fascinating behaviour, which of course we went through with her. So that's one way that we can read those conflicts, that they can reinforce each other. Okay, I'm just going to go on. And John, what we saw with him, this is interesting in his personality, the comment you said earlier. What you'll see with John is a lot of inner conflicts. When we're looking at maps, you know, the spirit can conflict with, you know, spirit is out there, you know, sort of, you know, don't want to sort of be managed. I'm happy for things just to come in, make my own decisions. Again, can be the opposite to defender. The same, we often see a conflict with searcher and defender. Searcher is very future orientated, defender is past orientated. We'll often see, let's say that the defender with the creator and with the spirit. The director and friend can also be a conflict in the motivations. It says quite a bit to the motivations. And what was happening with John is when I was with him, he was being really managed quite hard, and he didn't like it. That was why his spirit was down in a 6. But he was all over the place. I found it difficult in the beginning to kind of understand what he wanted. He was working at home. The office was about an hour's drive away. He had a remote team, and it was like, you know, I like to work from the office, but I like to be here, and I like to be in control, but I don't want to be upsetting everybody. And this, and they sometimes, and his manager was saying that his team were taking a bit more control, and he wasn't in control, and it was kind of like a confusing message. As I'm describing it to you, is how it was coming across. Well, it wasn't until we looked at his map that he had all these inner conflicts going on in his top 20. So when I look at the conflicts of, you know, director and friend, defender spirit, searcher defender, defender creator, all in his top 20 and above, were all getting muddled up. And again, it was just very interesting how that was playing through in his behaviours. At 75% motivated, not too bad, but it wasn't really the motivation. It was kind of what was going on for him, which this map was revealing. Okay, and here we have a team map. Actually, just before I come back on that, Kayleen, are there any questions before I?
Yeah, there's a couple that have gone through. So John has said, to what degree does somebody's personal life, i.e. getting married, divorced, or new children, affect motivations? And how can directors deal with such issues without invading personal lives of a team member?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be through your management skills. So those kind of outer work things, even though the profiling is more work orientated, that's how James has set it. And he's always told us as practice that this is more work orientated. Of course, it's going to come through into home life. Your defender will play through a big change, you know, being divorced, getting married. They're big changes. Of course, that's going to play through in your motivations. But this is all about you sitting down, maybe with a map, and using this to facilitate some of those discussions, because I think often people don't understand they just don't understand themselves. So this can help people to kind of recognize maybe where they are and normalize their behavior. I think that's your biggest thing there, to normalize what is going on for them, and using not just this, there's other things you can do as well, but this could be a tool that can help you to understand, you know, to go through and help them to understand where they are. You can allow, you know, without invading their personal life. I don't think you need to do that. I think you can have a very professional conversation with this kind of tool. And if you're doing it in the right way, with empathy and asking the right questions, that can draw it out. But I think it's about using these tools to help normalize somebody's behavior. Yep.
Thank you. And then Andrew has said, apologies if this has already been discussed, bit late joining. Thoughts on introverts and extroverts within corporate business regarding motivation and job satisfaction using the types explained?
Yeah, so be mindful, because this is a different dimension to individuals. Andrew, what we talked about earlier was somebody who was very strong. You would see them as a classic introvert. Okay, that's you would see them as that. What was interesting in the motivations is we talked about our friend, and you might naturally think, well, they're an introvert, so they're in MBTI, it's introversion, so it means they get their energy from being just in their own self. But sometimes people think, well, introverts, because they get branded that, or they like being in their own place and they're fine. Because this individual was high friend, it was not okay. So that can play through. And somebody who is more in extroversion, who plays those extrovert tendencies, they're probably pulling the hair out sometimes, perhaps on a bit of lockdown. They're chopping at the teeth to try and get back into the business. But I think there are other dimensions there, because as we know, people, regardless of their profiling and who they are losing some confidence coming back into the workplace, and all of that is happening as well. So there are different dimensions, but you can see things that play through, but they are different dimensions, E&I, to what we're talking about here on motivations. So you could have somebody who is preferenced more introversion, somebody who's more preferenced extroversion, and their motivations can be very similar. Yeah.
Thank you. That's it for questions at the minute.
Okay, so let's just have a look at this final piece on here on the team table. Right, so this is a team table. So what we're looking at here is a lot going on there. So just have a little bit of a look. The searcher is number 1, spirit 2, down to builder number 9. And you can see the overall audit score down on to the percentage. So overall the team is 67% motivated. Number 1, 2, and 3 on the right hand side is the order of people's motivations. So you can see that the red is the top motivator, the orange second, amber the third, and the lowest is the blue. But let me just, a couple of things that jump out here is where you have somebody who has a very high motivator versus somebody who has a low motivation. So we could pick out Gemma and John, for example. Gemma is high star at 30. John is low star at 10. Take it or leave it, not really bothered. Now, there's nothing in here on who's the manager, I'm not listening, but just imagine that maybe John is the manager and Gemma's an employee. And he might not readily be feeding Gemma's motivation of star and giving that praise and recognition. If they're 2 members of staff, they could just find each other, or maybe John might find Gemma quite frustrating. You can also see a little bit with Chris, 25 on expert. Simon is an 8. So again, you can see a little bit of a quite high and a low, and that may have an impact on their interaction in the team as well, where particularly if Chris is the manager and he's high expert. So it's all about, the knowledge and the mastery and knowing everything and getting the I's dotted maybe, and Simon is just not. So it's those clashes and the tops and the bottoms, which are really interesting to observe in the dynamics. We also use these maps to get a little bit of a feel for the culture of the team, the dynamic of the team. That can be really helpful. And what we're seeing here is searcher, spirit, defender, creator. So we may have a team here that kind of is quite on board with change, quite like it, but they don't really get round to it because defender pulls them back. That we see. Defender can just, all in our own time, we'll get around to it, we know, when we do it, but they like change. Builder, we've had a couple of examples of low builder in a team. We had an organisation where we looked at the team dynamic, builder was lowest, and they said, that's really interesting because we have an issue in procurement as an organisation, and we haven't got a grip of it, which is too nice. She said, we're paying our suppliers when we want to, and we're not getting 3 quotes. And she said, I just don't think we're focused on the financial side. So she said, this is really interesting that this has come out in our profile. So again, we're looking at profiles to perhaps give a little bit of an indicator as to what the culture and what the dynamic is looking like. And we can do these also for organisations. Of course, if everybody's doing the map, you can look at it sort of organisationally, and that is really interesting. We did one organisational map, thank goodness on this one. They were all about change and innovation. Innovation, big thing. Mission, goals, vision, innovation. We want to be at the forefront. And they said, we want to do the map. So I said, oh my God, I hope creator is going to be coming up in top. God forbid if it's going to come down in low and your vision and is all about change and innovation. It wasn't the highest, but it did come up there. So thank goodness. Their defender was coming in as well. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but it was coming up further up. So that was a bit of a win. God forbid if that had been coming in lower down. You know, we'd have just had to have coached it and trained it. So that's how we can sometimes use these, which is very helpful to look at that dynamic. Yeah, okay. I think we're nearly there, just coming in on to a couple of last pieces here. Looking at those map and career choices, I'm just thinking about our driver sort of earlier in my head. This is where you can just start sort of seeing people's motivations and maybe the kinds of careers and the things that they're doing. The builder, if you've got roles where they're sort of linked to pay and reward and commission, salespeople, kind of it'd be good to have high builder. Another time we've interpreted maps, and we actually had somebody who came for a sales role, and they were low builder. I think they were low builder, they were low spirit, and I think they were low director. There wasn't really the profile we wanted for a salesperson. He was a lovely guy. Really, really nice guy. And actually, he came across initially as a really, really nice chap, and we really liked him. And he gave us a good, you know, a good profile of him. And we then did his map, and we thought, we could have a bit of a challenge here. He was indicating to us that he had to be back by 5 o'clock because of his family. He was giving us some stuff that we were thinking, God, you know, but sales isn't just a 9 to 5 job. You know, you're out with customers and you've got to be on your own and make it happen and get out there. So he was just giving us some stuff that we thought, you know what, we'll do his map. And his map just gave us what he said, and we were not happy about it. We fed it back to him. He said, oh, no, I haven't done my map properly. And he redid his map, which then came out with what we wanted as a profile. It blown it at that point. It wasn't going to work. But how interesting. Again, it was revealing the behaviours that we were sensing. Director, you know, like to see that promotion. Can I progress? They like perhaps a role where they can have some responsibility built in. So, you know, I'm not going to go through all these sort of word for word, but you can see that when you're looking at maps, this is why we can use it for recruitment and for people's career progression. But be careful, as I said, because this is all about understanding people, getting the wider picture, understanding their script, understanding their experience. This will give you a good, you know, dimension and indicator that as somebody's self-concept changes, their motivations can change. So it's using all of this in your kit bag as great information. We see it very reliable information. So yeah, there we are on our map career choices, and this is available. This, if you're really interested in these slides, then Kayleen will give you a copy of these slides. So a piece on some key points maybe just to be thinking about on the closeout. Kind of 4 key points really for me when we're looking at mapping. And the first thing is that remember your motivation levels are linked to your happiness and productivity. So it's we've had what's interesting is you know to be a little bit careful here also, because we had an individual who was he was very lowly motivated. He's low in his motivation. If you've got somebody who's motivated, you'd naturally think tick tick, they're productive. Somebody's motivated, they're going to be productive. That's a tick tick. But what about if somebody comes up very low on their motivations, but they're really productive? We had this. Low on motivations, but they're really productive. And his bosses said to him, I can't understand. And he was actually looking for another job. And they said to him, I can't understand why you're chucking out so much work. I mean, you're just so, you know, we know you're not happy, but you really are throwing out the work. As I said, it says that there's a lot more to individuals. But somebody that's low on motivation, but throwing out the productivity, don't be thrown with the productivity that they're happy. They might not be. And this individual is a classic example of that, and he left. Okay, so that's an interesting one. Of course, also be mindful that somebody might be really highly motivated, but not very productive. So they're having a great time, but they're just not focusing on the right things. So that can be another dynamic as well, that as a manager, they're having a great time, but are they actually doing what we want them to do? So be mindful of those dynamics when you're looking at motivation levels. How well are your motivations being met? That's going to change. That's the PMA score is the bit that fluctuates. The order in 1 to 9 is more likely to be a bit more stable, but the PMA score on the right-hand side is going to change more rapidly. So this is where we're saying check in. And we've had a couple of our practitioners have just gone crazy with sending out maps in the last couple of months. And I've said to them, you know, gosh, you're sending out just loads and loads and loads of maps. They said, yeah, we just want to check in and see where everybody is and what we can do and whether we can catch anybody and help and support. So just be careful, because they can change rapidly. They can clash with other people. So again, this is a useful tool, very useful tool for team development, obviously personal development, because if you understand yourselves, that helps you to work better in a team, but to help people understand and feed each other's motivations. You need to feed yourselves. Don't just be relying on other people to feed your motivations. That's a cop-out. And that's just going into victim mode, that it's about everybody feeding mine. You have to feed your own motivations and maybe make change, which is uncomfortable. And others, it would be good for them to feed your motivations too. So the team can be doing that when people are understood. And vulnerability, I guess, you know, should I perhaps put that as the last point to close on, but it's challenging times at the moment. The defender motivation in particular could be quite challenging for people because they're feeling vulnerable. The change, am I going to have a job? What's happening? And the friend, I mean, the others as well are playing in, you know, the director, they're all playing in, but I've just picked out those 2 just because we've seen those coming through as some stronger ones that we've seen being challenged, and have had some examples of those. So yeah, things to think about. I hope you've really enjoyed that. That's me just bringing that to a close. If you're interested in doing a map, yeah, we can do one with you. We can feed it back and see what you think. And I've said that we license practitioners. So if you're thinking, gosh, this actually is a really helpful tool, we can help you to really read these. So yeah, anyway, I hope you've really enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Thanks. We've just got a couple of questions that have come in.
Yeah.
So Colin has said, thinking about the process, what sort of time or other factors are involved in an individual's mapping process?
The timings are with regards to somebody doing a map, Kaylin, if I got that right, yeah. So you can doing a map is there's about 30-35 questions. Barking bonkers map, by the way. How James has come up with it when you do the questions. There really is a bizarre question set, but it works. That can take 10-15 minutes to do the map. So we can get a map sent out to them, they can complete the map, and then it's just about interpreting that map back. You could do that quite comfortably in 3/4 of an hour to feed somebody's map back, to give an overview, and then use that for them to understand. So yeah, you can do that process can be done relatively quickly. Hopefully that's answered what that question was, Kayleen.
Yep, perfect. And then we've just got, how do we do a map? Can it be done online with a calculator?
Yes, it's an online map, so we can send it over and they can complete the map. It bounces back into our portal, and then we can zoom in with somebody, and then that can be facilitated just to talk through, because it would be good just to give somebody the heads up to interpret their map. It does need to be interpreted, but yes, everything can be done online over Zoom and whatever. Yep.
Perfect, thank you. Now this question, I'm not sure if you're happy answering, but you can answer it personally. So they've said, that was a very good session. How much do you charge to complete a map? I'm not sure if it's a simple one-off line cost, it might be more bespoke.
Yes. So if we're going to, so anybody that's coming in from today, our usual charging is £40 for the map, and then we'll just charge a fee for going through that time. So generally, if somebody was the map, generally £40. If we're doing an hour of consultancy with the map, we would just charge £120 to do that. But that's based if it was like a one-off, somebody's wanting a map and going through it. Do talk to us about that, because if you've got a number of people that you're interested in, we could have a group of people and talk them through it, and then do their maps individually, and we'll cost all of that separately. But generally, £40 for the map. So if we were bringing mapping into a programme, for example, and we're talking about it, we just charge £40 because our consultancy time is in. But if we're doing it separately, then we would just charge our consultancy time to go and deliver. So, but talk to us about the costings, because we need to make that work for everybody, but that will hopefully give you a bit of a benchmark. Yeah.
Thank you. So there's a lot of people interested in the map. So what I'll do is I'll share the presentation along with Catherine's details, and then you can go back to her directly with your personal questions, etc. So we've just got one more question to finish with from Sally, saying, is the Insights questionnaire / I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Jung's colour wheel similar to a motivational map?
Do you know what? I am struggling to find similarities, because you can, and I think that's because we are dealing with quite a different dimension here on motivations. And when you look at all those sort of psychometrics, your insights and your Myers-Briggs, and you can kind of see some similarities in those because they're the personality based, but the motivations we see as different. So therefore, if you think about your friend and the introversion on Myers-Briggs, hopefully Sally you're familiar with, because I think that's what you said on Young's Myers-Briggs, you may naturally think, well, somebody's really high on I, so they're going to be quite low on the friend. No, they're not. So we are seeing, I am not seeing, because I've searched for the similarities and the patterns, but I'm seeing it as a different dimension to an individual. Yeah, which again is another reason why it's floating my boat, because it's just something different. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think that's everything. Just want to say thank you so much for everyone joining us this morning. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think it was a perfect way to kind of, I know we're not quite finished our week, but it was a nice way to start a Friday morning. I've definitely learned so much. So thank you, Catherine, for sharing your knowledge and your experience and your passion. That definitely shone through. As I said, I'll share Catherine's presentation and feel free to contact her. I can't say it, Motivational Maps moving forward. Catherine, did you just want a final farewell?
Yeah, thanks. I am very passionate about mapping. It's a great tool. Just come and talk to us about it, and very happy to help. And thank you very much for your time. So yeah, stay motivated, and from me, have a super weekend, whatever you do. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, and hopefully we'll see you all again. Well, see you all again soon. See you later.
Take care.